Hi, I'm Lazu. Welcome back to KCZIN. Go to the website, become a supporter so we can keep this message going and keep this channel alive. We are the only pro-independence media outlet for our people. And pro-independence means that we want to form our own country. So the only news that you find in this media outlet is about independence for African Americans to form their own independent nation. That's the perspective of our media outlet. Quite different from what you find in MSNBC or CNN for other political parties. Now, let's get to the gist of today's discussion. We're discussing about the issue that our people are facing today, a real serious issue. And this is the discussion. Today, the politicians, particularly the ones in Washington, are stealing the rights. I'm gonna repeat that. They are stealing the rights of our voting, of Black people. They are stealing our rights. Now, none of the parties will tell you that, Republicans or Democrats. They'll tell you otherwise, but we're going to show to you how they're actually doing this in front of your face. Now, take in consideration that this is all now being discussed because of the H.R. 1 bill, which is taking place in Washington. They call it the Voting Rights Act. That's what they term it. But it's just an amendment. That's something that already existed, which is the Voting Rights Act. It goes back as far as 1965, when it was first issued in Washington, due to the efforts of one Black man named Martin Luther King Jr. and made it to Washington. So, what exactly is this Voting Rights Act? It sounds kind of strange, even when you make reference to it for Black people, because the 14th Amendment already gave Black people the right to vote. So why are we having this discussion in 1965? And the reason is, though constitutionally it was written that that right was for Black people to vote, the people in this country, even though they wrote that law, they didn't mean it. It was actually written as a punishment against the Confederates, which were all Democrats. The Republicans punished them. That was the party of Lincoln, the Republicans, and they didn't want them to run for office after the Civil War. And they were concerned that now that Black people were no longer less than a human in terms of numbers, 3/5 of one, but now a whole human being, that the new population count in the South, where the Confederates were, was about to explode. And because of that, they were concerned that they can start losing political power because more districts will be rendered to those new southern states. So that was an issue that the Republicans had. So they had to come up with a remedy to maintain power, that's what it was all about. And the way they did this is by giving the right to vote to Black people. Wow. And of course, give a punishment to the whites who actually rebelled against them in that war and made it harder for them to have control by having now to face a challenge by Black people. So now Black people were going to be challenged by white Democrats in the South fighting for the same political position, and that made it better for the North because that would minimize the participation of Black people taking over politically, which is not what they wanted, but now they allow them to challenge their white counterparts, and they were hoping that white counterparts would win, and they did. They started creating things called the Black Codes, or laws specifically against Black people. What did the North do when those new laws were being created? They were happy. They didn't do anything about it. They did not want Blacks to take over those states. So they allowed their former Confederates to now create laws to make it very difficult for Black people to get elected or even vote, even though they had the 14th Amendment in place. So this is the kind of government that this country has always been. That was then, and they're doing it today. How are they doing it today? Quite frankly, the 15th Amendment and the 14th Amendment all give black people the right to vote as citizens of this country. However, there's a lot of room for doing what they want. And they did this intentionally because they don't want you to become a majority. So how is it happening today? Well, here's what took place. We call it the 1965 Voting Rights Act, but in reality, that's just a term of its original name. Its original name is the enforcement, get this, the enforcement of the 15th Amendment. That's its actual name. So they were going to try to enforce what was around 90 years before that because they didn't want to enforce it. So now, all of a sudden, they decided to enforce it after the efforts of Mr. MLK Jr. So that was the original purpose of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. How does that take us to today? The Voting Rights Act bill was designed for black people. So it was an enforcement mechanism to enforce what was already written on the 15th Amendment. But that was constantly being withheld, was constantly being forbidden, and both parties were culprits. This is what happened. They tried to pass that law into 1965. They barely got it through. However, there have been several amendments that have taken place ever since. And every time an amendment takes place of that act, which is just an enforcement mechanism, it continues to evolve. And every time there's an amendment to that amendment, it gets further and further and further away from its original design, which was to get black people the power to vote. That was its original purpose. Now, if you look at H.R. 1, it has nothing to do with black people at all. The biggest component, that there would be a $61 given by the government for candidates. So if you raise $200 from your campaign, then the government will match that and making the total $1,200. Wow, you raise $200 and the government makes it $1,200. It's like magic. But here's the thing, that provision is for all 535 members of Congress. But wait a minute. They're not black. Only 55 of those are black. Why are the other 480 members getting paid for something that has nothing to do with the 15th Amendment? That's critical, the 15th Amendment, because the Voting Rights Act is an enforcement of the 15th Amendment. So why are they benefiting for what you were supposed to receive? Imagine what Martin Luther King Jr. would say today when he realizes what he had pushed for and attained. Now, 480 members of Congress who are not black are receiving complete benefits of this. Now, according to statistics, the actual campaigns of those candidates will be somewhere around $1 million added by the government if they receive this actual benefit. Man, imagine that. That's $480 million. That's almost $500 million. $500 million that's supposed to go to the black people who are getting elected into office. That's the theft. That's the stealing. And you know what? The Democrats want you to support it. They want you to praise it. They want to say, yes, this is great. This is wonderful. This is great. What our people need. No. They're giving you $50 million and they're stealing you almost $500 million out of your pockets. That's what H.R. 1 is all about. The Democrats are not going to tell you this. The progressives are definitely not going to tell you this. And the socialists don't even know that even exists. They are the ones who are colluding against you. Colluding, stopping you from creating what you deserve. a political party that you control, funded by the efforts of our people, our ancestors, who in 1865 were given this right to vote, kept for them for 90 years, and again, they want to keep it away from you, not receiving the benefits of what they've added to that original bill in 1965. I tell you, we got to go against them. That's why you need to join the Mahali Party. We got to go against all 480 members, if not all 535, because they want to steal your money that you rightly deserve and get ourselves elected into office. That's right, through those funds that they want to steal from you. The Mahali Party, the Black Party, which is a pro-independence black political party, is pushing hard to make sure that we go to Congress on 2022 and get that done. We prevent them from stealing our funds. That's right. The Republicans are not going to support this. The Black Democrats, the Black Caucus, they're taken by the Democrats. They're bought by the Democrats. They're willing to give that up. Okay? They'll give them that extra $1 million, which is total about $50 million, and they will not say a word of what we just mentioned, allowing them to walk away with $500 million that should have been yours. We're going to go and get it. MahaliParty.org. Check us out. Become a member of the Mahali Party so we can make the real changes that our people are saying. You know what? This is what it takes to be independent. You think independently. You don't think within the size of a Democrat, a progressive, or socialist, or even a Republican, or even a Tea Partier. You think as an independent nation. That's how we think. Because that's our goal, to become a country. And they're not going to get away with that. Not on our watch. Perhaps with the Democrats who are black, but not on our watch. Because we are focused on independence. And we're going to get that $500 million. We're coming for you in 2022. MahaliParty.org. Thank you.